2 years ago, I met this girl on an app called Yubo. And the app was pretty much a dating app for teenagers, like young people below the age of like 21. So they have this little swipe feature where you can swipe left or right to add friends, just like a normal dating app, but like they don't structure it like a dating app, but it's kind of obvious that it is. And at the time, this girl was a year younger than me, and she lived about 30 minutes away from where I lived. So we chatted in Yubo, and then we moved on to Snapchat and chatted there a bit, and then eventually we decided to meet up with each other one day. During that first meetup, we actually got along pretty well. Like, I would say that we liked each other pretty quickly. But medium distance was definitely a problem. So we pretty much resorted to a lot of texting, messaging, and FaceTiming every single day. That was the time when I also started my clothing brand, Mizushi. So it didn't take long for me to get really busy really quickly. And I would say that both of us were overthinkers, like really big overthinkers. So this 30-minute distance between us didn't really help us with our relationship. We were both pretty clear about our own insecurities and the fear of losing each other. More so the fear of losing feelings for each other. You can say that we were both very paranoid about our relationship or the future. Because, you know, we were senior year of high school and, you know, things were really changing at that time. And at the time, we still didn't really know each other that well. I pretty much just met this girl online. And it's kind of weird to say that, but whatever, like, I think to those of you who know what catching feelings is like, you guys can relate. Then eventually things started to become like, oh, I can barely see you, I'm busy today, my parents won't let me go out, I'm going on a holiday, and then things just weren't working out with us. So I made a really shit decision. I decided to end it before it became anything, really. I didn't want anything to become toxic, so I just said, okay, we need a break. And this was pretty much a prime example of me overthinking about my situation. Reflecting on it now, I could have honestly thought about it. I could have sat there, taken my time patiently, and just, you know, talked with her through it. So yeah, my dumbass thought it would be better to end it off completely, which was such a shit decision. My reasoning was always hypothetical. It was always a delusion in my head, this fear of losing interest, this fear of being toxic with each other. But this one girl, she really liked me, and I clearly liked her. Like, we really got along well. But my paranoia really got the best of me. And I was completely wrong for this. I'll admit it, I was completely wrong for this. It was all my fault. And to be honest, I still kind of regret this decision to this day. Fast forward a couple years later, I read a verse from 1st of Samuel. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. This is in chapter 30 of 1st of Samuel. So this story talks about David and, you know, what he's going through. He was very stressed. He lost his 2 wives, his city was captured, people were planning to stone him to death. But the very last part of this verse is the most important one, because it says that he took all of this patiently. He chose to use his spiritual strength. He exercised his faith in God, and then he encouraged himself in the power of God. He remembers his past experiences with the amount of grace, mercy, and goodness that God has given to him. And he kind of hopes that God appears to him and saves him in one way or another. And if you read on, God pretty much did that later in the story. These days, I'm not, you know, in a similar position as David. Obviously, I don't have wives that are lost, I don't have people who are trying to stone me. But the point is, I have been stressing out so much from the most minor inconveniences in life. And that has always been like that. So I've always built up this habit inside of me of, oh, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? And this toxic cycle of thoughts and emotions that I feel. But whenever I remember this verse, this story from David, I remember to put my trust in God instead of myself. And it's really easy to say, because I've said it before on camera, but it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, man. The act of surrendering your own life for a higher power, I was never used to that. So recently I've been trying to practice that faith in God, like really to just give up and surrender to that power. Whenever I sit down and pray, I just naturally tend to calm down, you know. Praying is just a really good practice. I think it's better than meditating, reading, or whatever any other good habit out there. Whenever I overthink, I just tend to talk out loud with God. Not to God, but with God, you know, it's just a conversation. I try and ask questions and raise issues and be as honest as possible, you know, because there's nothing that I can hide from God. So there's no point in sugarcoating anything. I like to be as raw as possible, as real as possible with God. And I just want to say right here, right now, that Today, I don't overthink as much as I used to anymore. I don't stress out as much. I don't get angry as much. I'm not as arrogant as I used to be. I'm not as impatient as I used to be. I don't get stressed out with many things because I know that God has put me here not to stress out. God didn't create me to overthink. God didn't create me to be trapped in my own mind. And it was really hard for me to realize because I've spent years trying to figure out how to stop stressing out so much, how to stop overthinking from the most simplest circumstances. And I gotta admit, with the next relationship or with the next girl I talk to, I gotta do better. I gotta stop letting my thoughts get into my head because I think it's just the devil trying to play with me. If there's one thing the devil wants, is for you and for me to surrender to ourselves, which is scary because for me at least, I've been doing that most of my life. Glad that Jesus Christ was the one to save me from all of this, save us from all of this. Because the more you learn about Jesus, the more you realize like he's the perfect example that we can honestly just follow for the rest of our lives. And it's more impactful because you realize that he's perfect and I'm not. That makes me a broken piece and that makes him a whole piece. He's the best example we can really follow. I always go back to the fact that Jesus really did die and bleed for me. For me, as a broken piece, someone died for me. And God promises us eternal peace through Jesus Christ. And I think it makes life a lot easier to deal with when you know that as a fact, when you really believe that, when you do your research and you realize how awesome God is and how awesome Christ is. Because you finally have someone to depend on. And I've always been an independent type of guy, but that never really led to any peaceful situations because I'm always trying to back myself up. I'm always trying to carry myself when I already have enough issues with myself. I already have these insecurities and these things that I can barely deal with myself. And at the same time, you expect me to, pick myself up. I've tried doing that for years and I realized that it's only a matter of time until something breaks you. And a lot of things have broken me. And then you realize that you're just broken in general. You've always been broken. You were born destined to be a broken piece. And that's okay because through Jesus you can be saved. You gotta learn his story. You gotta learn his purpose. I just love Jesus. I'm glad to say that on camera now. So if you're a young adult who's struggling with similar toxic thoughts and constant overthinking, I just want to hear your story. So the first link below will take you to my exclusive school community of young Christian creators. This is where you can connect with other people like you and I, talk about your struggles, stay accountable, stay productive, find your purpose with actionable steps, and create authentic content to help others throughout the world. Other than that, I will see you tomorrow.